This is California Now, a podcast produced by Visit California. I'm Soterios Johnson. This episode, Cheech Marin, the comedian, musician, and actor, has long been known as one half of the comedy duo Cheech and Chong, famous for movies like Up in Smoke.
Hey man, am I driving okay?
I think we're parked, man.
He also starred in TV's Nash Bridges and even voiced one of the hyenas in Disney's 1994 animated classic, The Lion King.
What's the hurry? We'd love you to stick around for dinner.
Yeah, we could have whatever's lying around.
But did you know he's also such a huge collector of Chicano art, he could fill an entire museum? In fact, he recently did just that in the Inland Empire city of Riverside. It's called the Cheech Marin Center for Chicano Art and Culture, or just the Cheech for short. In today's episode, we go deep on how the museum came to be and why it matters to Cheech personally. Before we wrap up, he also takes the California Questionnaire. And we're joined now by the man himself, Cheech Marin. Welcome to California Now.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here.
Well, thank you. First off, congratulations on this museum. I mean, you've got to have a tremendous sense of pride about it.
Oh, I'm just grateful, more than anything, because this thing dropped out of the sky for me. It just came about when I was wondering what to do with this collection that I'd been gathering for 40 years. And this offer to house the collection in Riverside just happened like it was a prayer answered, I think, and I couldn't believe, at first I couldn't understand what they were asking me. I thought they wanted me to buy a museum. I said, well, I'm doing okay, but I don't know if I'm doing museum rich, But no, we want to give you the museum in order to house the collection.
So, I mean, how were you first kind of introduced to Chicano art? Is it something you kind of grew up seeing, or like how is it? Why is it so special to you personally?
Well, because it speaks of my background personally. I'm a Chicano, a proud Chicano, and so is my father, who died at 92 some years ago. And it just represents who we are. This category of Latinos that are melding with the American mainstream and using that in their art as well. So it identifies a group of people who have for a long time been unidentified or unsubstantiated or recognized. And so. And I didn't mean that to do that at the beginning to collect this art. I just recognized what great art it was because I had been studying art since a very young age, since about 11. I think I had this group of cousins. There was 4 of us, and we were bright kids, and all went to Catholic school, liberal arts education. And so the head cousin, my cousin Louis, decided he would form a group of us, and we would study other courses like AP classes. He assigned each of us a little corner of knowledge to find out about, and I got assigned art. And so, how do you do that at 11? Art sounds. I can draw a cartoon of Mickey Mouse. Is that art? But I decided to go to the library and start taking out all the art books. So they wouldn't let me take them out. They would just let me be in their presence while they turned the pages. And so I started studying art that way. So by the time in a year, doing that every week, I had a really good knowledge of Western art. And coincidentally, because it was, went along with the subject, I started visiting museums from that age. And go to museums all the time, especially LACMA, because I live in LA, and then seeing paintings up close and personal. And you have to see paintings in person to really get the true value of them. So I kept on that course until I came to a position where I had enough money to buy art. And that's when I discovered these Chicano painters. They'd already been discovered. I mean, they were out there doing stuff, but not on a large scale. And I had no intentions of doing anything. I just wanted something green to go over the couch,
So, I mean, it seems like the term Chicano art and culture can kind of like encompass a whole lot. So what are some of the hallmarks or through lines that tend to distinguish that grouping?
The term Chicano was originally an insult from Mexicans to other Mexicans living in the United States. The concept being that the Mexicans who had left Mexico and are now living in tin shacks along the borders were no longer truly Mexicanos. They because they had left their country, they were something less. They were smaller. They were little satellite Mexicans living along the border, and they were something less than Mexicanos. They were chicos. They were Chicanos, little Mexicans, and it was a derogatory term, and it depends on where you lived in relation to the border. And as time went by, it became less of a derogatory term and more of a description. Because I always grew up that, well, I'm not Mexican. I've never been to Mexico. I can't speak Spanish, but I know I'm related to that group in some way. And so when I first heard the term Chicano, my uncle Rudy, who told me he was describing how he went to a mechanic and because he had to get his car fixed. He said, and he wanted $200 for it. I said, hey man, give me some tinfoil and a pair of pliers. I can fix it. I'm a Chicano mechanic. And I go, that's what I am. That's what I want to be, a guy who can do and does nothing. Nothing's going to stop him. He incorporates everything he can into that formula. And so, well, okay, that's what I am, and I've been Chicano since then.
Right. And then as far as like the Chicano art and culture, I mean, is there something like when you were looking at the art from Texas and you saw that there was something common with what you saw in LA? I mean, what's kind of the thing that kind of connects them all together that makes it, something in common?
It's description of culture in a myriad of different ways, whether it's personal, familial, or religious, or gender based, or any other kind of aspect that you bring into it, and how that melds with the mainstream of American society, and how they came together while still keeping their identities is a real unbelievable process, and it's still going on today. So it was a description that had not been described before. We were the early Chicano artists, especially, like, were told that they didn't really make fine art; they made agitprop folk art.
Hmm.
And every painter that I told that to, because this was the official response from the museum, asked me the same question: "What's agitprop folk art that I've been making?" And I said, "Well, that's not what you make, but don't worry about it." And it was just that attitude that you were not to be taken seriously and or even studied or and for the most part ignored.
Hmm.
But Chicanos cannot be ignored. But from these different aspects of seeing the culture, what you arrived at was not a crystal clear picture from step A to step 27 of how what Chicanos are. It is the feeling, it is the taste of the culture, you
Like
know.
the aesthetic.
Yeah, the aesthetic of the culture and what that consists of, and it's a lot of different aspects coming into play at the same time. The
Hmm.
sabor,
Right. The flavor.
the flavor of it, and so and there's no American schools of painting and or art that I know that can describe themselves that way because they're not necessarily description of a culture, whatever that culture is. But Chicano art is. It's a description of that culture in a
Hmm.
myriad of different viewpoints.
Right. It's a kind of like a blending of what Mexican and American, like
Yeah,
United States American.
and world art, because all these artists, with the exception of maybe of three in the collection, are all university and or art school trained. So they were exposed to world art right from the beginning of their education, and so they incorporated that in what they were doing too. So you could get Caravaggio and you get the Chicano version of Caravaggio, or any of the artists from then on, and that's what was really interesting about their approach to art, and also they never gave up the brush.
Hmm.
Their hand it's a handcrafted art, and the inspiration comes out of the brain and travels down the arm and through the hand into the most primitive of tools, hair on a stick, and that's how they describe their culture, with this primitive tool, and they became very adept at it. It's the analogy is like the first time you ever heard the Beatles,
Hmm.
their music, and you go, I know this music. There's Chuck Berry in it, and Jerry Lee Lewis, and Elvis, and all those guys, but it's English at the same time. How do that work? It works because they love that music, and then they adapted it to who they were and how they were, and just kept going from there. And so
Right.
that's a real descriptive narrative for that kind of music. Same
Right.
as for Chicano art. There is a narrative there.
Right. Right. So let's talk about how the museum came to be. When exactly did you start collecting the art that would eventually one day go in it?
God, it had to be about 40 years ago.
Hmm.
40 years ago when I first saw my first piece of Chicano art, and being an inveterate collector that I am, I go, okay, there must be more of this, So, and, and the thing about buying one piece of Chicano art, all of a sudden 20 Chicano artists because the word goes out. There's somebody buying. And I guess that was a perfect storm for that time. I knew what the art was. I had the energy to collect it, and the money, and the money to collect it, and also the notoriety in order to proselytize for it. Which I immediately started doing because I put together this collection, and all my friends, my newly acquired friends in the art world, said, "Well, you have to show this. This does you no good under the bed or in the garage or in storage or anything. You have to show this." Well, how do you do that?
Can you give me a sense of how big your collection is today and how much of it is actually on display at the museum right now?
Um, well, it'll take. I gave the museum about 550 pieces,
Wow.
and I have maybe about 150 other ones that I gave to my family estate for my kids and grandkids.
Hmm.
And that's it. It's either in storage, and I still have to pay for it. But now, as I give it to the museum, they put it in their storage, which is it's a great deal. You're handing that over, and it's like I experienced that feeling in little bits over the years when I was touring the Chicano Visions tour. That was 7 years and 14 major museums, starting with the Smithsonian and LACMA and the Young and San Diego Museum. And every time I opened a show there, I would go after the show was hung. I would go there and have my lunch there when there was nobody there before the museum opened. I would take a lunch and I would just walk around. And it was like visiting your kids that came home from college. And and it would be in different configurations all the time. And so it's like, oh, how you've grown and how you have other friends. It's good, But it was really, but in that process, I started feeling it leave my hands, at every because it now really just didn't solely belong to me. It belonged to the people that it was about, and that was my gift to them.
Right, right. Like you were kind of almost like the steward of this
Yeah,
up to this point, and then you've passed it on to the museum to kind of take it from there.
yeah, and, at that point, I felt like, like when you're the wizard in the movie The Wizard of Oz, where the house is falling from the sky,
Hmm.
and I felt that, well, I just have to stand here on this X, and it's gonna fall on me, and that's what happened. It fell on me like, "Oh, okay, this is really real."
Yeah.
The thing that was fortunate about it is because of this building that they had to repurpose in Riverside, and that they could take the whole collection.
Hmm. Hmm.
That was an important part.
Right.
I mean, maybe the most important part. It was a museum that was willing to take the whole collection and have that building be the repository for the whole collection.
It sounds like you've really learned how to navigate the whole museum world. That must have been a whole education right there.
Oh, believe me, it was.
What did you learn about that world?
Especially at the beginning, they were very trepidatious, shall we say. Nobody wanted to put their head on the block and scream out, "Yes, this is Chicano art, let the blade fall." None of those guys wanted to do that. And especially with somebody that wasn't nominally qualified. I didn't have
Uh-huh.
a degree in art. I was this guy who told dope jokes.
Wait, so let's dive into that just for a little bit. So what is so contentious or what's so prickly about defining Chicano art?
Well, they always have had the experience of somebody else outside of the culture defining that art for them.
Hmm.
Well, this is what Chicano art says, John J. Smith. You know, well, wait a minute, you're not part of the community. You don't have any
Hmm.
particular insight into it. And how come we get defined by somebody outside of the culture?
Hmm. Hmm.
And that was always a contention. They're like, wait a minute. we can define ourselves. We all went to college and have doctor's degrees and blah blah blah, this and that. We should be able to define ourselves and break into that community that does the defining, And for all those years, we hadn't been, because we weren't recognized as legit.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so now we're legit. Too legit
Right,
to
right.
quit. Huh.
So hey, so let's talk about now what it's like to actually visit the museum. So say I'm going there for the first time. What do I see as I walk up to the building and walk in?
Well, you see this building, which is a beautiful mid-century building. It's really beautiful. I mean, if you had a list of top 10 mid-century buildings, this would be in that on that list. And it was the town library for Riverside, California. And Riverside was unique in that in the 1880s, Riverside was the richest per capita city in the United States
Really? Wow.
because of citrus. They grew everything citrus, oranges, grapefruits, tangelos, lemons, limes, everything, and they built a railroad into the groves and packing houses along the way, and they shipped citrus all over the world. So in 1880, you could get an orange on Christmas morning in London, England, because of Riverside, California. And so it was a small town, so they became very rich, and so they started dedicating, building all these famous historic buildings for Riverside. Several museums on our block, and they built this library. And now they wanted to build a new library, Jetsons kind of library that every city in the world are building. And they had to repurpose the building. And they were down the road, I think, with a children's museum of some kind of children's science museum, and that fell out. And I had done a show at that same time at the Riverside Art Museum, which is 4 doors away on the same block, and it was a huge show for, I think it was Works on Paper, and it was a huge show for them. It was the biggest show they ever had, and it was a local celebrity for them. And so the town manager, the city manager, came up with this idea. Well, why don't we offer it to Cheech for the collection? He'll give us the collection. We'll give him a place to house it, and it'll be there forever, and everybody will be happy. Wait a minute, how does that go now?
It's
I
like, wait,
gotta
did I
buy a
just hear what I thought I
museum?
heard?
I don't know.
Right,
No,
right,
no.
right.
We'll give you give us a collection, and we'll take care of it, and we'll show it for in perpetuity, and it'll take time to roll it out. So everybody will be used to seeing it now, because it's going to take at least 5 years to roll out the collection once.
Amazing.
Yeah, so everybody gets a chance to see it, a bunch of, and you can come back and see a new show, and so in that way, uh, it really draws people not only to Riverside, which is a beautiful historic town, and you'll have
Yeah,
fun, and it's right next door to the Mission Inn, which is a
right,
national historic cultural monument,
right. Right. We're
and
gonna get to all that. We're gonna get to all that in a minute. But I wanted to ask you, so like as a visitor, and as I walk into the building, so what do I see? What's my experience?
the first thing you'll see in the lobby of the museum is a giant lenticular piece by the De La Torre brothers, Einar and Jaime De La Torre. It's 26 by 13 feet tall.
Hmm.
And so, to accommodate the piece from the library, we had to cut out the floor of the second story. Actually saw a big rectangle out of that so the piece could fit through the floor and up into the second story. And I don't know if you've seen lenticular art. There's not much of it out there, because these two guys are really the forefront of that whole category.
Yeah.
It's
What is it?
lenticular art is, like when you open up a Cracker Jacks, and they had that little picture, a little thing in there with a shape, the vision,
Right.
the image shifted, if you depending on where you
Right.
look at it.
Yes.
That's lenticular. It's a
Okay.
plastic prismatic kind of art that reflects light and images in a way where there's multiple images in the same space, depending on which space you look at it from.
Like what angle you're looking at it
Yeah,
from?
as you move it, and this is a huge piece. I mean, it's 26 feet tall by 13 feet wide, and there's
Wow.
hundreds of images in it, and you're just like, whoa, this is the introduction. Well, maybe I like Chicano art.
So you kind of like you started off with a bang.
Yeah, it really. It's the most spectacular opening piece for any museum that I know of, and I've been into a lot. And wow, it gets your attention right away. Then you start rolling through the first iteration of the collection, which is about I think about 90 pieces, and they had to work through it to get it down, to because what I didn't want the audience to do is get painting fatigue, which I often get when I go to a big museum. I can't see
Hmm.
any more paintings. I don't care how
Yeah.
important and wonderful they are. I'm just tired, you know. And but this one you can see the whole thing and really enjoy it once, and then you can go through it as many times. And then the next time you come, there'll be different art there. And then what I wanted to do, and I told them at the beginning, is let's make the Cheech the center of any cultural activity or any civic thing that we're doing in this town. There should be, they should do weddings and baptisms and dance contests, and Miss Riverside should be crowned there.
Hmm.
And that's what's happening right now. People are getting
Oh,
married
that's
there, they're
great.
getting baptized, and it's exactly what I envisioned. And everybody loves to come to it, and it's been packed since we opened.
Yeah. I'd love to hear about some of your favorite works in the museum, and why they're special to you.
Well, there is. It's like having a favorite child.
I know. I was afraid you were going to say
You really can't do
that.
that. The one that's giving you the least amount of trouble is a favorite child. No, I don't have. It changes all the time because painters are coming up with new paintings all the time. That's the thing is most of the major painters that haven't gone on to the afterlife are still working at the height of their career, and they're still making
Hmm.
wonderful, beautiful, important paintings.
Yeah.
So I don't worry about
Well,
it.
well, how about this? How about if you knew somebody, you had a friend who was coming to the museum who had didn't have any idea what Chicano art was about. Are there like one or two paintings that you would say, okay, check this one out
Yeah,
because it kind of represents like the ethos of the art form?
yeah. There's there's one a painting by Benito Huerta from Texas, wonderful painter, but he painted this painting which was a conversation. It's a comment on a conversation between Picasso and Kandinsky. And so he takes this Damoiselle d'Avignon by Picasso, and he reimagines the painting on velvet, and it's a big painting on velvet of Juarez hookers or TJ hookers, that are looking over the other side. Mexico is in the background, and
Hmm.
and does it on velvet with lip rings and nose rings and all kinds of attachments on it, but it's on velvet, and it's incredible. And that's one half of the painting. The other half of the painting is a sheet of lead, and it's
Hmm.
big. I mean, it weighs 200 and some pounds. The sheet of lead. And I asked him, "Well, what's the deal here?" And he says, "Well, Picasso said that art is everything, and Kandinsky said art is nothing." So I wanted to contrast those two opposing views, or maybe the same views, in one painting. And so the very first time I saw that, I went to, I think it was an art show in Houston, and this painting was there. And I walked into the building, and wow, I get it. I know Picasso's work, and I know Kandinsky's work, and wow, this is really cool. I think I'll just take one trip around the hall to see what everything is, and I'll come back to this piece. And I got back and it was sold.
Oh, wow.
And wait a minute, that's not how the story goes. You know, you didn't read the script here. And so a lawyer from Corpus Christi bought that painting, and that just last year, the year before, he passed away, and his son had now had his estate. He knew that I liked that painting. He called me up. Do you want to buy that painting? I said, yes, indeed I do. And so
Hmm.
I think it's called Exiles Off Main Street, and it's by Benito Huerta, and it's on velvet. It's the only one on velvet.
Wow, it's amazing. I feel like every single painting or every single piece in the museum probably has a story behind it like that.
Similar to that, yeah, absolutely. There was some paintings I bought. Your city does an art walk or an art thing, and they have things up. You can buy there by the artist, and so I would see one that I really like, and I would camp out. I would make a bid, and then I would camp out there and try to scare everybody away until the show was over. There was a few of them that I did that process too.
That's great. I mean, your personal collection is a huge focus of the museum, but there are other works there too, right? I mean, did you discover any new artists during this whole process?
Oh yeah, I'm in the process of discovering them all the time. The De La Torre brothers were new. They were essentially glass blowers when I first encountered them, and they still blow glass. And they and combine. If you come to the museum sometime before December, before the first of the year, the second story is a whole retrospective of the De La Torre brothers' work, and it's spectacular. I mean, I've seen a lot of shows. This is spectacular because it's a combination of all their glass work and all their lenticular work, and there's close to 90 pieces in there, and they're huge monumental works. And when this show comes down, a traveling show of about 40 or 50, maybe 40 works from this show will go on tour sponsored by the Smithsonian.
Hmm.
So you may not ever get a chance to see this show again if you don't see it now.
Wow. Do you envision maybe bringing traveling exhibitions to Riverside in the years ahead?
Oh yeah, yeah. That's what we want to do. Is like-minded museums. We want to have establish a relationship with them. So if there's something that we like to see from their museum, and vice versa, we can do exchanges. And so now
Mhm.
we want to get the Chicano art known all over the world.
All right, well, let's talk about Riverside now. You grew up in the Los Angeles area. What do you love about Riverside in particular, and how did you get to know it?
Well, I didn't know Riverside very well until we put a show there. And I mean, it's very adjacent to LA. It's about an hour 15 outside of LA. It's easy to get there, and it was it's a very cool town, and that it was prosperous from an early age, and also was dedicated to citrus, and so you have this really kind of a citrus flavor to the whole town. It has, and it's agricultural, but it's very artistic at the same time. And I go, wow, this is could be a new art center for the country. And then as it goes on, I think it will be.
And we'd be remiss not to note that the Riverside community is more than half Latinx, right? I mean,
Yeah.
is that important?
Oh, it's very important, and the whole Inland Empire is same story. So you have a huge group of people that will initially see this, and then we were going to keep increasing that audience, not only America wise but worldwide. And that's happening right now. We're starting to get international visitors, and it's only been open for 2 months, 3 months. And
Hmm.
so the word is spreading. So it is because the art's good. I mean, really, has if they just put my name on, I don't know how much it would draw. I would draw something. Let's see him fall on his face there. Uh, no, but it's because the art's good. And the more
Right,
they get to see it, the more they will realize how good, what great artists we have in this collection.
right. Like maybe you might get people who come for the name, but they stay for the art.
Yeah, or at least for the nachos. And also, I'd like to add at this point that it's a cultural center. It's not just a repository of a collection of paintings. There's other aspects to this museum. We're going to have a film department, which is going to be headed by Robert Rodriguez, who's going to come and teach a course there. He has this
Wow.
program called How to Make a Film with $7,000, which is what he made his first film for when he was a
Right. He should
student.
know how, right?
And
Yeah.
this program teaches you to do is every single job in the movie making community. You could be a director, a writer, the gaffer, the cable puller, everything, and so you know exactly what each job should do. And Robert he previewed this program at the Directors Fortnight in Cannes, and it was a huge success. And so I asked him, "Well, you want to bring this to Riverside?" He says, "I think this is the perfect place to do it." And so that's what we're going to do. And then there'll be other aspects of it. Really would like to have a print atelier at some point, so we'll be like a self-help graphics or one of those print places that we make our own prints and have a whole wing of that, and so other artists can go forward making prints, which is a very important aspect of Chicano art too. And then other stuff that we come up with between now and then, we'll have a section for it because Chicanos are diverse in their abilities. So, but at the end of the day, which I always say this, and it scares out all the people that actually have to raise the money. I would really like to have the world's first lowrider museum in Riverside.
Wow.
I think, and lowrider art is a huge worldwide category, and it's big in
Yeah.
a lot of places in Australia and Japan, all over Europe, and then they love it. So, but to have a museum there, I think it'll be an even bigger draw than the Cheech.
Yeah, I love that you've kind of expanded the idea of a museum is not just a place that you put, yeah, art that has already been created either by, people who have passed away already or maybe people are still alive, but you've made it like a community gathering space
Yeah.
that, people can learn how to become an artist or to, improve their skills or just learn more about what's out there and what they could do themselves.
Yeah, I think that's what it is evolving into, and I think that that's really accepted by everybody, and they like that idea. That's why they're coming. They're coming, and in 2 months we've done more business than the Riverside Art Museum does in a year, and that's in our
That's
first
amazing.
year.
That
So
says a lot.
yeah, it is, and it's a really unbelievable process, and it's what happens when you have an overload of expectation. When you're the first Chicano museum and everybody's been waiting for anything Chicano.
Right.
They like, I mean, and they really come and they like it, and it's a beautiful. It wouldn't be successful if the art wasn't great, but the art is great.
Right, right. So, Cheech, when you're in Riverside, is there a certain place you like to stay or neighborhood you like to visit?
My wife and I usually stay at the Mission Inn, which is right next door to the museum. And it's an international cultural monument, officially erect. 12 presidents have stayed there. It's a beautiful, it's kind of Gaudi-esque, hotel. And it's directly next door. You can hit it from a rock with a rock from the beach. And I like to stay there a lot of times, but there's other places, and great restaurants, and they're building more hotels, and it's a wonderful place to have a good time.
So, let's turn now to what's next, both for the museum and for you personally. Let's start with the museum. What's on the horizon there?
Well, we're just kind of waiting out the first year to have the first rollout of the collection. And like I said, it'll take about 5 years to roll it out, and we have to decide which pieces continually stay there, which pieces are added, but we have to get through the collection, so you'll see the whole thing at front. And I'm still collecting, kind of. There's still major pieces because I have this narrative that I want to tell, and I want to have the examples in order to sell the point, and the artists are still making them because it's still in,
Hmm.
in continual evolution. This whole school, it keeps growing.
Yeah, it sounds great.
Yeah.
And what about for you personally? What else are you working on?
Oh, I'm working on getting days off. Last year was a big year for me work wise. That's when I told you I don't want to work anymore. I let that be known, and all of a sudden I got jobs. I did 3 big movies last year. One of them is about to come out again. The first one came out, did a Nash Bridges movie, me and Don up in San Francisco, and then I did a big J Lo rom com, which is about to come out now, called The Shotgun Wedding, and with Jennifer Lopez and Josh Duhamel and
Hmm.
Jennifer Coolidge and Lenny Kravitz, myself, and Darcy Carden and Sonia Braga, and a couple more I can't remember right now. But then I did another picture called "The Champions" with Woody Harrelson. It's about basketball, and so I was busy last year doing movies. So I don't know if I'm going to be that busy this year.
It either pours or it's a desert. It sounds like. Is it
You
you're either
know,
putting together a museum and doing 2 movies, or you're gonna like maybe relax for a year?
I like to do the relax for you. My wife and I just bought this house out. Well, not just a few years ago. Bought this house out in Joshua Tree, and so we live here half of the year, and that's where I am now. And
Hmm.
it really does a lot to ensure your sanity. Just to be able to live out in the desert and not be, have all the hassles of inner city.
And I can only imagine that getting the museum opened was such a huge focus of your life for the
Jesus.
past few years.
Yeah.
What do you think you're gonna be focusing on in the years ahead?
Watching the creosote grow out here. No, I want to keep working and doing something, but not at such an accelerated pace. I mean, Tommy and I, since the beginning, we toured all. We would tour 300 dates a year.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. That's a
Yeah.
lot. We did, and so I mean, a small year for us was doing 200 dates a year, and that's something. And we did that for a long, long time. We're both not getting any younger. And it's hard traveling, and so we want to do something that's not so hard.
Cheech, one other thing we like to do here on the show, it's called the California Questionnaire. It's a set of 12 questions to get at what people love most about the Golden State. Would you be game to take part?
Sure.
Okay. All right, here we go. Where do you live?
I live in Los Angeles and Joshua Tree.
Why there?
Los Angeles because I was born and raised there. I'm a third generation Los Angelino, and Joshua Tree because I love the desert. We found this wonderful little house that all you have to do is come and sit in it, and you get better.
What's your greatest California love? I mean, it could be like a beach or a concert venue. What do you love about California?
I love that they have the ocean, that the shoreline. I lived in Malibu for 40 years right on the beach, and every day is a different day.
What's the biggest misperception about Californians?
The biggest misperception about California is that they're all the same. This is the most diverse state in the union. There's 100,000 of everything. Let's put it that way.
What's the stereotype that most holds true?
It's always sunny in California.
What's your favorite Golden State splurge?
Ooh, splurge. California, and especially Los Angeles, where I live, it is one of the restaurant capitals of the world. And then you can get any kind of food and the best that there is of that in California, and especially Los Angeles and San Francisco, or anywhere you go in California.
All right, let's say it's time for a road trip. Where are you going?
Ooh, a road trip. Well, I like the desert. I mean, every day I'm out here. It's more because I like the desert because you don't have to do anything. You just have to go and stand in the air,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just the best. So I like road trips to the desert.
If you could decree an official state culinary experience, what would it be?
Ooh, on the quest to find the perfect taco.
You and me both.
Yeah, baby.
What would you say is the best California song?
I wish they all could be California girls. California girls, Beach Boys.
Why that one?
Because it has Californian girls, my two favorite things.
Okay. How would your California dream day unfold?
First, I get up whenever I feel like it. And that's my biggest pleasure in life, to just sleep until I feel like getting up, having a cup of coffee, and looking across the desert at the mountains. That's a perfect day to me.
Mm-hmm. And then how would you wrap it up?
I would not have any more coffee because I got to get to sleep. I would go outside in the warm desert day and smoke a big blunt.
Well, Cheech, this has been really great. Thank you so much for joining us on California Now.
My pleasure. And come to Riverside and see the museum. We'd love to have you.
Absolutely. Cheech Marin is the entertainer and art collector behind the Cheech Marin Center for Chicano Art and Culture, located in Riverside, California. You can find out more at riversideartmuseum.org. This is California Now. Thank you for listening to California Now. If you enjoyed our California Questionnaire with Cheech just now, you can find dozens of others on our website. We've surveyed big names, including comedians like W. Kamau Bell and Margaret Cho, top flight chefs like Jet Tila and William Bradley, and musicians like Blink-182's Tom DeLonge. It's all waiting for you at visitcalifornia.com. That's visitcalifornia.com.